Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of the Evil Safety Dudes. I got a very special Evil Safety Dude with me. You may recognize his voice as he has been on here before, making his second appearance, Mr. Tracy Matheny. How are we doing today, sir?
How you doing, Aaron? I'm doing great.
Where are you joining us from? What state are you in?
I am in Benton, Kentucky.
All right, so, before this episode's over, remind me to talk to you about the tornado that just went through your area. But what's the weather like down there right now?
Today it's about 60 degrees.
Oh, man, it is so cold
man.
here. I don't even want to hear it.
It's going to be nice all week up to Christmas. It's going to be 70s on Saturday.
Man, I'm up here freezing with a double beanie and a scarf and a big thick coat, and you're down there in 60-degree weather.
Yep.
Man, well.
Yes, sir. Dress accordingly.
Right. Yeah, that cold winter is no joke. All right, so how close are you to where those tornadoes just went through recently?
Well, they actually went right through Benton here.
Really?
Right by my house here, about a half mile. If it hadn't been dark, we could have seen it.
Wow.
But it was about a mile wide. So it came through, it hit the north part of town, which wiped a lot of homes out north of here. And then, of course, Mayfield ain't but just 30 minutes, 20 minutes away. And it totaled Mayfield out, Kentucky. And then it went right on up to Princeton and right on up to Dawson Springs and kind of wiped it out a little bit. And then it went on up to Madisonville, Kentucky.
Man.
Did a lot of damage over there. We had some my lady's girlfriend that works for her. Her parents were on 60 Minutes last night.
Man.
So we're cleaning up from that. Very, very devastating event.
Have you ever seen anything
this time of year?
Ever seen anything like that close to home?
Kind of rare, you know what I mean?
Wow. Man, so today we're talking about, how to set up safety for a big job site. But while we're talking about this recent current disaster, man, imagine if you were running safety for a big job site when and you go to work the next day and that tornado had went through there.
Yeah, I've been on some projects where tornadoes have hit. And
Really?
Oh yeah, I was in hurricanes. I did a job down at Florida Power and Light years ago. We had a hurricane come in, and we was doing some combined sites. It did a lot of damage. We had a lot of temporary, break tents and Conexes for tools, turned over, moved.
Wow. Connexes are heavy.
And they're heavy.
Man.
And, a lot of the temporary, offices that we had was all turned over and damaged, So, yeah, it can be devastating, whether it's a tornado or a hurricane,
Now, I'm just going off safety for a sec, going into production. I could just imagine how devastating that'd be to production if you had to actually tear down some structure you just built because it's too damaged to be, fixed. And that would set the whole project back.
Yeah, I've been on a couple, Aaron, that were a tornado had hit, and that the owners decided to clean up all the mess, just put the project on hold for a while,
Man.
Let the insurance company come in and do their evaluations, and that's very time-consuming.
Well, yeah, for people who are doing construction for a living, they got to go find another job probably at that point.
Yeah, most of the time, if you're a union hand, you just sign back up and go to the union hall, and they put you back out. And if you're with a non-union company, most of the time, those companies will have something else, placement somewhere else in the United States.
Right. It's tough, though. A lot of project guys, and this is kind of your world, going from project to project. These big projects are nice because you have a little bit of stability. But what a lot of people don't realize who don't do project work is when you get a year or two job, you kind of setting up a new home. And some of those folks might have already rented a house, things that aren't as easy to pick up and move.
Right. Of course, I did the mobile home part of my life in my 20s. I had a little trailer. I took it around, and then you know, once the KOA campgrounds and all caught on to, hey, hey, we're gonna start charging people double that come in here for
Wow.
construction.
They
That
busted
that
you.
didn't save me any money.
Man.
So I always try to tell people stay mobile, get a motel room.
I know a lot of guys that did that, had the campers and they saved a lot of money. They got to keep a lot of that per diem. But I noticed when they came up to Iowa, then they started trying to ask all the insulators for some insulation for all their pipes in their campers because they weren't used to the winters up here. They were trying to get heat trace from the electricians. They were having some trouble with freezing pipes.
Right.
Yeah.
If I had a mobile trailer now, I'd make sure that it had a heat trace on it,
Nice.
insulated, where you can just plug it in and hopefully be done with it, because it don't take much to freeze up them little campers.
Might not be an issue down in Kentucky, though, huh? Winters down there?
Typically between November and March, Western Kentucky usually gets, anywhere from 10 degrees to 40 degrees,
Oh,
typically.
all right. So that would be an issue down there.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not unlikely. It's not unlikely for us to have snow this time of year.
Wow.
2,
But
3 inches, 6 inches.
so back to that tornado. That tornado in December. That was rare, though, huh?
It's it's
Extremely
it's
rare.
one of the rarest events that we've experienced here. I was in one here about 10 years ago with my dad. It was an L5, and
Wow, that's a big one.
it was the same thing. I was on a project, the Kentucky Dam project, and staying here on the lake. And my dad had a place up at Moore's Resort, Kentucky, and it totaled everything up there. And so that's been how long it's been since we've been hit by any type of tornado, F1 to L5.
So speaking about all that, if you were hired to be the safety manager of a construction site, brand new, barely just doing earthwork, they bring you on and they say, do your thing. And because a lot of times they can't give you directions because they don't know the safety world. They just tell the safety guy, do safety. But when you get to start planning an emergency evacuation and you're thinking about tornadoes, what are some of the things you're planning for that site? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah.
So what are some of the tornado plans that you would come up with for a brand new construction site?
Well, a lot of times, there's been several remote locations where we've actually buried Conexes in an excavation so people could get into.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of cool.
It's a good idea.
You have like
A lot of the
ramp. How do they get in them?
We put it at a 45 like a ramp where people can get in, open the doors.
Nice.
And you can crawl down in it, open the doors, and you can get a lot of people in a Connex.
Yeah.
And, you install 4 or 5 of those on a project, is a good place to go for tornadoes and severe weather.
Wow.
And a lot of times your customer will have, basements to their existing plants, unless it's a brand new plant.
Right.
And then a lot of times, during the setup of the job, I meet with, the local, police, firefighters, response team, the life flight helicopters, all those folks. And they have designated, local areas that our people can go to and check in and get into a shelter.
Yeah, I always think that's a challenge for construction workers is tornadoes, because depending on the phase of the project, if it's a brand new site and they're just doing earthwork, it's like, what do you tell that guy? He's out there, running heavy equipment, and you got to orientate him, and you get to tornadoes, You know, I always think that's a difficult challenge. You know,
I definitely don't want them in the office, right? You
say
know,
say that again.
I said we definitely don't want office trailers.
Oh yeah, that would be bad.
That'd be really bad. And then a lot of the operators, we tell them to stay in their equipment. A lot of times
That actually makes sense to me because that equipment's several thousand pounds, right?
it is some of that stuff. 10 ton, 20 ton, 50 ton pieces
And
of equipment.
those are
So,
actually, if you had your seatbelt on, those are designed, those cabs, to not kill you if it got tipped over and you had your seatbelt on. So I imagine even if the tornado was powerful enough to blow one of those over, as long as you had your seatbelt on, you're not going to get crushed by that overhead guard.
right.
What do you think about them like getting out, getting under it?
No, you're better off staying seatbelted in. With this piece of equipment. A lot of operators are beg to differ. They say they'd rather get out of it. But then you got a better chance swept up by the tornado.
Yeah, if you're not like tied into that, because you don't want to rely on grip strength on something like that. It's not like the movies Hollywood with Twister, where the guy wraps a belt around a pipe and he's just grabbing on and he's dangling in the wind, and his forearm grip strength's allowing him to hold on for all that time. With that's Hollywood. That's not reality.
Right. I'd rather take chances seatbelt into a heavy piece of equipment than I would be out by myself in the wide open.
And there might be issues with maybe debris, breaking the glass and stuff. But if you got a big Carhartt jacket on, you can put your hood up, and try to protect yourself. And again, we're talking about extreme emergencies where you're just in the middle of the field and there's no ditches, there's no basements, there's nothing. I mean, you got to do something to survive, and I could see how that would be definitely something that might save a guy's life one time.
We had 35,000 feet ceiling with this tornado here of debris.
Whoa.
So with that said, there's a lot of debris in it.
Man, 35,000 foot ceiling as far as like.
Ceiling footage and just debris only.
So that the debris was being sucked from the ground and shot up 35,000 feet?
Houses, roof shingles, cattle, cars, trucks. It's just a ton of stuff that was in the twister.
Man.
Um, Saws, hand tools. Anything that would be in a house was in the air.
Well, that's incredible. Imagine people finding stuff a county away from where it originally got sucked up at.
I think they said there was originally. I guess there's actually 3 tornadoes involved in it from the Paducah, Kentucky Weather Center. They're dissecting the tornado, and the little ones around it. They were popping up so fast that I never seen a weather center in Paducah, Channel 6 News, so scared. They were actually coming. They were afraid for their lives.
Wow. And when those guys get scared who have all that extra knowledge and equipment, it's something serious.
It was real serious. They were telling people that take shelter because it's going to be catastrophic.
Man.
So we're lucky just to lose, 75 people is what the count is now.
Man.
So.
And to my knowledge, that's a very high count for a tornado.
Very high count. Very high count.
That's
and
incredible.
They interviewed several people. They just stated that something told them, God told them that they needed to go seek shelter somewhere else. A lot of folks stayed with their home. Took the chance. I stayed with my home. Took a chance staying here. Could have sucked me right out into the picture.
So, do you think some people died that were in their basements even?
Oh no, I'm talking about I stayed in my home here. And a lot of people decided to leave and go to basements and shelters and churches. And then there's, people like me that stayed with their home.
Right. Wow. What a devastating event that was. So tornadoes. The emergency evacuation plan. Once earthworks done and they got slabs of concrete, they got some steel going up. Do they build a lot of basements around where you're at?
Oh, yeah, they got shelters, all over the place here.
But as far as on new builds on construction sites, if it's an add-on to a plant or if it's a new plant, a big major construction project, I haven't seen any with basements in Iowa when they're building plants.
It's always a good idea to have a temporary shelter,
Right.
if not multiple temporary shelters.
Yeah, because I'm just imagining from my experience, in Iowa, a brand new plant being built. They level a cornfield, they do the earthwork. They take out some dirt, they bring in some foundation dirt. The trenching and the concrete. And some steel's going up. There's still not any real tornado shelters yet. I mean, unless you made one like you're talking about.
I was in one in Oakley, Kansas. We were building a digester unit with 4 tanks, digester tanks, and we all got inside the tanks, and we survived it. And It went right
Wow.
by us, tore up our offices, tore up the ethanol plant, halfway. But we stayed inside the tanks and survived.
Wow, that's kind of a cool ingenuitive thing that you guys come up with. I never thought of that, because there's a lot of vessels sitting around on a construction site getting ready to be flown and put in place, and some are already anchored in to the ground on all their anchor bolts. And a lot of it on a construction project, they're clean. There's no product in there. It's construction. There's no piping to it. And so yeah, being able to get in one of those in a dire emergency, I could see that saving your life.
And Aaron, a lot of times, in new construction, the configuration of your project changes all the time. You know, so as you go along, your emergency action plan could always change.
Right.
Assemble area. Sometimes you may have. When I was at Seaboard Triumph Foods there in Sioux City, we had 7 or 8 locations to assemble in. When you're dealing with 30 acres,
That makes sense.
of mass project.
Yeah, for 1 month you got an assembly area here, and then the project changes, and now they're building on that site where you were gonna muster and congregate, and now you got to come up with a new assembly point.
Right.
Staying on top of that and adjusting all your orientation curriculum, that's something that happens during a construction site orientation.
Yep.
And
Orientation's always important, to cover that and let them know that, I'm going to be bringing in the local fire department, keeping them on most of the time I like to keep the response team and the fire department and the EMS people on a 2-week basis, bringing them out to the job.
oh, that makes sense too.
As it changes, keep them up with drawings, prints, roads, access roads that change, take them out, show them to them, what gates to come in, how many cranes we got.
Now, you've always been doing
that type of stuff.
Since I've met you. You've always brought in the local EMS to the site to give them the lay of the land, just in case they had to respond in emergency. But I want to, question where that came from. Was that something that you were taught and you understood and you just decided to do it, or did that come from an experience where you're like, these guys need to know sites, and so you always do it? Like, how did you get so into doing that where you've been so consistent with that over the years?
Well, in my younger days, I worked for smaller companies that didn't believe in telling people what they were doing and didn't get the bang for their buck and understand that the severity of getting somebody hurt because response time sometimes, the clock's ticking, you know. But then when I went to work for some larger companies, it was always part of the EAP plan for the site specific to reach out to all, the police department, the fire department, the lifeline of helicopters, and bring them in on it because they're going to be the ones going to be there after the plant is built. So they're going to know it like the back of their hand. They keep them in the loop, bring them out, show them around, introduce them to people that's going to be there, the owners that's going to be there later.
Okay.
It's always part of the plan.
And I like what you said earlier about not only bringing them out, but bringing them out on a continual basis. Because just because I went to a construction site a month ago, that doesn't mean that site looks anything like that a month later. It changes so rapidly. So those EMS guys could stay fresh on even the roads change.
For example, when we were in Esterville, Iowa,
Right?
a lot of those small towns like Esterville, I would join the fire department. Um,
I remember you were a volunteer firefighter.
Yeah, for 14 years, I made myself available for the local fire department, just to lay out some of his experience to some of those guys that were involved with coming out to our site.
That's pretty cool, and that would give your site an upper hand too. You being on the voluntary fire department, I can imagine the people that you worked with, other volunteers, they knew more about the site because you were on the team with them, telling them about it. That's pretty cool. I wonder how many other construction safety managers are doing that, joining the local volunteer fire department.
Oh, they like it too. They like a guy like me coming in a lot of times, and it helps you build a relationship with the local people too.
Yeah, for sure.
You get out and work on house fires or chemical fires with them, and bring some of that experience to their table.
Definitely.
And it's always a good idea to do that.
I haven't had the greatest experiences with voluntary fire departments, just from lack of equipment and training and them putting themselves in danger without the training and experience that the bigger departments have. And, sometimes, I found myself where they're there to rescue, but we almost need to protect them as well.
Well, I've been fortunate. I put myself through firefighter 1 and 2, and then, of course, being a first responder has helped me learn a lot. And then bringing that to the front lines, is important. Because most of the time I'm going to be, as a first responder, I'm usually going to be the first guy to show up on an accident of a job.
Right.
Either that or they're going to come to my office, to where, we provide first or whatever we need to do with them, make a decision whether they go to the clinic or, to the emergency room, or in some cases, we may have to get the lifeline helicopter involved.
Yeah, I mean, some of these sites are pretty rural, right?
Yes.
Very
remote areas.
They don't usually build a huge plant right in the middle of a town.
Yeah, it's crazy. Usually they're in remote areas outside of town, and 10 miles away from town.
So, as far as emergency action planning, we talked about tornadoes. How much different would it be for planning to deal with a hurricane if you were in a hurricane-prone area?
Hurricanes, it's pretty much the same scenario. When you get into bomb threats, that type of thing is a little different. A lot of times we get a bomb threat, we just let everybody go home and then call in the police and the bomb squad, and they take it from there.
I was on one site with the bomb threat one time. I was called in to do OSHA 30. I had to teach 4 8-hour days in a job trailer on a construction site for his plant. I was doing a lot of expansion work. And I'm rolling into the security early in the morning. And I got all these security guys who normally just let me pass once I sign in. Now they're looking under my vehicle. looking in my vehicle, and I'm like, "What's going on, guys?" And they said, "Oh, we had a bomb threat come in." But yeah, they were not stopping working. They were just like, "Be on high alert. If you see something, let us know." So I'm teaching 8 hours uh, in this job trailer, fearful of being blown up. So let's just go through a list of emergencies that could happen on a job site. We already said tornado and hurricane and bomb threat. What else you think could be an emergency that could happen at a job site that people should be prepped for?
Um, people with weapons.
Okay.
A lot of the disgruntled employees get fired and maybe come back with a weapon or a gun, holding people hostage.
Have you had any experience with that job site violence?
I have had some threats, and it's the same way. I've been on a lot of open shop jobs where you've dealt with unions, non-union together,
Oh, okay.
and then a lot of times the union guys or non-union will call in with threats, you know, just to disrupt the project in a lot of ways.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I've been on one site like that, and it was pretty intense. I had to go check up on the safety for some non-union guys, and they were hiding. They were literally hiding, sneaking around doing work because they were
Yeah.
scared of threats.
Then you got to deal with sabotage.
Okay.
People doing sabotage, the equipment. Believe it or not, even rigging. People
Okay,
cut a strand or something in a piece of rigging,
that's terrible,
which is crazy to do. But I've had it happen.
man. That's messed up.
It is messed up.
I've had one sabotage experience. We had two guys get in a fight, and all of a sudden, a couple of days later, one of the guys who was involved comes to me for a new lanyard. And I go, "What happened to your old one?" He goes, "Oh, somebody cut it." And I was like, "What?" I think he's just lying. People abuse PPE all the time and want a new PPE all the time. So I was a little jaded. People leave it at home, they lose it, and they want another one. But lanyards are expensive, so I'm like, "Okay, this is coming out of your check unless you bring me your old one." So, so he said, "No problem." So he goes and gets me his lanyard. He says somebody cut, and sure enough, somebody took a razor blade to his deceleration device. So luckily, he wasn't wearing it and then fell because
Right.
if that
there could be a lot of liability to that. But that's including retractables. I've had a lot of damage to retractables. You know, disgruntled employees. Cutting them, and so it's always a good idea. Anytime you're getting ready to use something, you need to look it over thoroughly, pull the retractables all the way out, check all the strands, all the cords in it. Make sure none of the cords are cut in the middle. Check out all your tools. Make sure your guards hadn't been messed with.
man, it's just crazy that happens.
So it's always a good idea to check all your equipment before you use it. It's a golden rule.
Well, for sure, but a lot of times we're teaching it because there could be damage, unintentional damage, but to think about sabotage damage, that's a whole nother level.
Whole another level.
This reminds me of one gross story. I was a new construction safety man. I met you on that Esterville project, but then after that one was getting done, they moved me to the one in Hinton, or maybe it was Merrill. No, it was Merrill. And same company, same exact size plant, ethanol plant. And so I'm on that site now doing safety. And this guy, it's summertime now. This guy goes to fill up one of those coolers full of water, so they could have drinks out there in the field by him. And I'm watching him, and he's filling up. He's using the right water and potable water, and he even had some of those Gatorade mixes. He's mixing it all up. He's being clean. I'm just watching him. And then he takes out his roll of duct tape, and he puts the lid on real tight, and he starts wrapping taping the lid on that big water cooler, and then he initials it. And I go, "Why'd you do that?" And he goes, "Oh, so no one takes it off and pisses in it." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever. Why are you doing that? I've never seen anybody tape the lid on those before." He's like, "No, I'm dead serious. These other contractors who don't like us, when we're not around, will open up this lid and piss in it if we don't tape it. This
Oh
tape
yeah.
this tape will show us that it's been opened because the tape will get all burgered up and we'll know somebody tampered with it."
Oh yeah. You might find a pack of beer.
I just couldn't believe that that kind of stuff was going on.
Oh yeah, they sit in it. Put dirt in them.
Man, you know,
So
we might be
what do you think about Aaron? What do you think about having Stokes baskets on a job?
a Stokes basket.
Yep.
I don't even know what that is. You're gonna have to tell me what that is.
Stokes baskets is where rescue people from elevated work areas.
Okay, all right.
It's got
Like,
it's got rigging to it, and you can set it up to either have a crane or a rope to lower people down from elevated work areas. A lot of customers or a lot of contractor project managers, they have a tendency not to want to buy them for some reason.
is that
And
similar to a sked? Like, I'm used to patient packaging for confined space rescue, where we go and put somebody like on a gurney and we lash them into it, and then we could pull them out. Is it kind of similar to that?
it is similar to that. The Stokes basket kind of has the sides to it. They're usually made out of a mesh type mesh, and they've got the seat belts in them. They got rigging, 4-point rigging in them with an eye in it to hook onto anything that you got to hook onto, and it's got handles on it where you can, if you ain't got any way to lower them down, you can pack it down. So you pack it if you do.
Wow. I mean, I think a big enough project with high risk stuff and elevated work, why not? And if it's a general contractor that's always doing those type of jobs, it's not like you got to throw it away. You should be able to use it from job to job.
Most of the time, I've convinced the owners to buy 2 or 3 of them because they're going to need them after we leave. So it saves them money. It saves the contractor money. And it's always a good idea to convince the customer to buy them. That way we'll have them because a lot of times it's not in the safety budget to buy Stokes baskets.
Yeah, I'll have to look those up. They sound pretty cool.
Yeah,
So,
they're pretty cool. They are. They're handy.
so besides sabotage, that's kind of where we left off, in workplace violence. Other emergencies. You ever worked in any earthquake areas? Had to deal with that?
Oh yeah, we was out in California. Earthquakes. Really not much place to go other than just stay still. Where you're at. Um, you deal with flash flooding areas and low areas where flash flooding is common. If we know there's a big storm coming, it's going to release 3, 4, 5 inches of rain, we try to just go ahead and close the job down and send people home. In
Yeah,
most cases.
yeah. Floods, flash floods, mudslides. There's so many really emergencies out there. Um, I don't know. How many plans have you seen that really do well at addressing all the crazy things that can actually happen? You ever seen a really good plan that dealt with it all?
Well, not 90% of it. You never really prepared for mudslides. Earthquakes is very minimum the odds, but you got to think about it. Being inside a structure, a new structure, an earthquake hits, you need to get out. Get out in the open if you can, so it don't crush you.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, I mean, try to cover what you can. Think of the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, there's so many weird disasters that are out there, and I remember a long time ago. I don't know if there was just more bomb threats, but you were talking about that earlier. They used to have pretty robust bomb threat training in orientations. And I feel like in the last 10 years, it's just kind of gone by the wayside.
Well, now that we've got so much, shootings, disgruntled, say for instance, example, school students, It's going to come back, I think, in the next, here in the future, if it ain't, in most cases, already implemented on a lot of jobs. People with firearms, mainly disgruntled employees, you don't never know what somebody's going to do to leave and come back or go to their car and come back.
What I'm educating employers to do now is to consider those acts of violence in emergency action planning, because some of these bad guys, they're not stupid, and they know where the muster points are. So they might create a fake disaster like a fire alarm, so everybody runs out and congregates, and then they're waiting there with the gun, or they're waiting there. They got a big truck to just plow them down. And so, we almost got to revamp all of our emergency evacuation, emergency action plans to account for worker violence.
What all the trash that people just the cigarette smoke,
What's that? You kind of cut out on me.
I said, I couldn't count all the trash cans that the smokers have caught on fire in my career.
All right.
Just people smoking in areas they shouldn't be smoking. Fire hazard, explosion. When you're dealing with temporary storage of high chemicals that, may have a 3 or 4 content flammability.
Yeah. That was always a tough time on a construction site for me, when they went from smoking anywhere and everywhere to only smoking in certain areas. It was really tough because they usually would put that on safety to enforce. I mean, and it's like, man, I'm telling this guy who's already been on the site for 6 months, smoking wherever you want. Now you can't smoke here anymore. You got to walk across, 5-acre job site to go smoke. And that's always really difficult to enforce. Do you run in a lot of pushback with that when they transition?
No, no pushback. Yeah.
Well, you've been on some good sites that you haven't had pushback. Man, I've had so much pushback from when a site rule changed, and people used to one rule today and then a different rule tomorrow. It's always been a tough one.
Well, it comes with territory.
Right.
One day you might have one threat, but the next day you might have 4 or 5 of the same threat,
Have you ever gone through a transition and rule change where everybody's used to construction rules, and then the build gets to a certain point where they want to switch to general industry rules?
Oh, yeah, all the time, especially when Stark takes over parts of the plant. The 6-foot rule goes to 4-foot rule for fall protection. Those type of things make it very confusing for the construction guys.
Yeah, and they put that on us to enforce those, and puts us in a tough spot sometimes. But that's why we're the evil safety dudes. We get
That's right, the evil safety dudes.
That's why they pay us to go out there and make sure these rule changes happen. All right, I feel like we've done a pretty good job just talking about all the variety of disasters. Tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, flash floods, mudslides, active shooter, worker violence, sabotage, tornadoes is what we started with. There's so many emergencies that could go wrong. And then what we were talking about at the beginning is, even when you got a good plan for each one of these and you're educating everybody on them, then the site changes and you got to re-educate. So I want to pick your brain on that for a second. Let's say you've educated everybody on the tornado plan or the fire evacuation muster point plan, but it's been a few months, the job site's changed, and now you have a new plan. And you're telling everybody that comes in, all the new people, that in orientation, but how do you tell all the people who've already been there for months about the change to the emergency action plan?
Well, there's been a lot of jobs, Aaron, that I've had daily safety meetings with everybody before we start work. Then we've had weekly safety meetings. I've had 2 shifts to where we've had weekly safety meetings day and at night to try to keep everybody abreast of what the changes are.
Wow.
You're talking about different things like tornadoes and all that. You also could have someone that's got medical conditions.
Right. That's an
You know?
emergency.
I've dealt with a lot of personalities that had sugar diabetes to mental health issues to, I usually like to try to tell people in orientation if they want to come to me in private and tell me in private that they've got some kind of medical condition that I know about, might help response time for them.
For sure. That makes sense, you know.
And a lot of them will come to me and say, hey, man, I've got sugar diabetes. If you find me wandering around the plant talking to my imaginary friend, you might catch me.
Right. I remember on that Esterville site, a guy went down. He was pounding Red Bulls and taking Dayquil at the same time, and he
Yep.
he had heart palpitations.
Right.
I mean, and that's not even a disease. That's just a guy ingesting too many things he shouldn't together and going down. But yeah, all those medical emergencies, those are genuine emergencies too. I mean, strokes and heart attacks, seconds matter. I mean, it's good to have a plan that's realistic and practice and something you can implement right away. Lives can be saved.
And then you got to deal with the substance abuse people, that
Right.
constantly drinking all night long and maybe doing heroin or cocaine or whatever the case may be. You got to watch those guys too when they come in.
Yeah, I've had some negative experiences with people that were using meth. They would get welding burns and real severe injuries and wouldn't even feel it, just burning craters in their arms. And
Yeah, I've caught a lot of them in the Porter Johns.
yeah,
Yep. Just shooting up, smoking meth, smoking weed, drinking a beer, drinking whiskey.
and
Right.
have you've had to? Usually, it falls on safety. Have you had to do a lot of drug tests yourselves? Go collect urine in a cup from people and stuff.
Oh yeah, random testing. Pre-hire testing for self-performing jobs. I used to do all the self-performing people that worked directly for the company I did, and then contractors, that came on board would have to do their own that met the criteria of the substance abuse program, and it provide me with a list of people who've been tested, states. So
And
yes.
people wonder why I call the show Evil Safety Dude. You want to get a guy to hate you, randomly just go up to him on a job site and tell him to pee in a cup. He'll hate you fast.
In essence, they just get up and walk off.
Yeah, I mean, if you're someone who's addicted and has no plans on quitting, and you're telling them, hey, this is a requirement, that's kind of a self that problem handles itself if they leave. But yeah, the substance, that's a big deal. The medical issues, besides having heart attacks on the job, having seizures on the job, and people having medical issues while operating a crane. People having a medical issue when they're in a confined space and can't self-rescue. So ton of issues out there that like you said earlier, you can't really plan for every freak accident in the world, but you could plan for a good majority of them.
Yes, sir.
And then experience helps
all
too.
you need is to have a 50-ton piece of equipment with an operator that falls asleep or drunk and hits the wrong gear, wrong lever. It could be devastating.
So I remember back in the day, it was actually kind of standard to drink beer on construction sites, lunch breaks.
Yeah, lunch breaks, overtime and break, 9, 2 o'clock, get them a couple quick beers in. Lunchtime, go down, get them a 6-pack. Go to the parking lot, catch them all the time, drinking a 6-pack of beers. Pretty common. It's gotten to where it's not as bad anymore because most jobs now are really strict about it, especially smoking. A lot of jobs here recently I've been on before I retired here, they didn't allow any smoking on any of the jobs I were on.
Wow.
No smoking at all. on the property.
On a construction project?
Nothing on the property.
Man, that probably made a few people mad, huh?
Yeah, I mean that puts a lot out there for people that like to smoke.
Yeah. Yeah, having to walk really far to hide a smoke break in your car, and yeah, it makes it tough. Makes it tough. So let's talk about orientation. Now, we were talking about alerting all these people to these emergency action plans and orientation, and then you had a great idea about to keep everybody up with the changes, having daily or weekly safety meetings. I think that's a great solution to deal with changes on the work site and to keep people up on all the changes. Like, hey guys, we used to go here for a fire, now we're gonna go here. And I've actually been in some of those weekly contractor meetings that you've run, and I remember some of the times you'd have 100 guys out there, and this is a construction site, so there's no microphones and amplifiers. You'd get in a piece of equipment, so you kind of elevated, and you would just raise your voice, and you just tell everybody about the changes.
Well, I tell you, it reminds me of the Seaboard Triumph Food Project. We had over 70 to 80 contractors reps in our daily meeting.
Okay.
Do you remember Ben?
Yeah.
And we had that big room in there. We had 70 people in there at one time.
Wow.
Maybe 80 people.
Man.
And then, another good way to share upcoming data with people to get to their people, and so yeah.
Yeah, keeping people up on the changes is a big deal. I've had some kind of inexperienced safety people get a job as being the construction manager and not know really how to let everybody know of those changes that were made, because they were just used to only getting to communicate to people during orientation. But having that all contractor mandatory once a week meeting, I think it's a great idea for all construction safety managers to do. Because they have scheduling meetings, where safety gets to go, and on most sites, safety gets to sometimes open those meetings, or they at least get to talk a couple minutes in those meetings. And you could tell all the superintendents and the project managers about the change, but how many of those guys are actually going back and telling all the foremen and the lead men about the change? I never really trusted that they were going to tell people that safety information. So actually telling them yourself in those weekly meetings, I think, is a really good way to let people know about changes in emergency action plans.
And a lot of times I would pick out a contractor and make a list. Most of your subcontractors, I recommended a lot of them, they had their internal safety meetings at different times so I could attend them.
There you go.
And show up, attend them, know about the changes myself. That way I know that they've been contacted and they know about it.
Yeah, I think one of the last big construction safety sites that I was on, the rule was all contractors had to have a daily toolbox talk, document it, and turn in that to the general. And then weekly, the general contractor safety person would have an all contractor-wide meeting. And between those two, I felt communication was pretty solid on safety, doing those two things. All right, I know it's not an actual defined emergency, but some people consider OSHA showing up on their job site an emergency, because that could have people freaking out, panicking, rushing off the site in a hurry. You ever been on a big construction project where OSHA showed up and people freaked out?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like literally run off the site?
There's a criteria that a lot of companies don't know about on how you're supposed to handle an OSHA visit and how you need to set that up. That's a whole nother topic.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll talk about some other time. But
yeah, it's funny when you think about it, though, but it has an emergency effect sometimes.
Right, it does. stop work.
People start panicking. OSHA's here, OSHA's here, OSHA's here. They start, legs get a little wobbly and then coming down off ladders and trying to do everything in a rush. And it's like, calm down, everybody, calm down. We don't want any injuries because OSHA came on site.
Well, most times they send their people home. They
Yeah.
stop work. Say, everybody come down, clean up, and go home.
Yeah.
We're done for the day.
Right. Yeah, that's been a kind of a standard way of dealing with OSHA for a long time in construction. And, the only time I've seen that come back to bite people is when a company set home people who OSHA needed to interview. If they were following up on a fatality or a catastrophic incident and they need to interview it, but the people keep going home every time they come. I was on a site where they had to come back 4 times before they could interview the people they needed to.
Yeah, it makes it difficult, and it makes the inspector a little aggravated.
Oh yeah, and that's one of the worst things you do is upset those guys. I feel as a human that when they get irritated, they might do a little bit more thorough of an inspection than they otherwise would have done. For having to come back, because a lot of these guys are traveling. They're coming from, in our area, they're coming from Des Moines. If it's in Nebraska, I think they come from Lincoln. So really taking a whole day out of these guys' life several different times, could frustrate them. But that's definitely considered emergency to a lot of the foremen and the workers is OSHA coming on site. How about just electrical activity? What have you seen in emergency action plans for lightning? What's kind of custom to tell the workers to do when there's lightning nearby?
Oh, lightning downs is pretty common, in the industry. A lot of us have what they call lightning meters. If it
Really?
gets within 20 meters, 20 miles or 10 miles, all the cranes are supposed to lower their cranes. People are supposed to stop work and most of the time go to their cars or go to at least to their office trailers or break annexes in most cases for lightning threat. And a lot of times when we know that it's a severe storm going to last for a while, we just send anybody home. Everybody goes home.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those things implemented, getting people out of boom lifts, scissor lifts, getting them off scaffolding.
Yep.
Yeah, shutting down them
Yes,
cranes, no elevated
getting out of
work.
elevated work areas,
Yeah.
off the roofs.
If you think about it,
Hill.
all of those things are big chunks of metal sticking up in the air. Sometimes they're the tallest thing in the area.
Yeah, lightning follows usually the tallest structure on a project, but that don't always hold true. It's sometimes a myth.
Right. I got a weather app on my phone that also tells me about lightning strikes, how near they are.
Yep.
It's pretty cool. I can pull up a little map and it'll tell me where all the lightning strikes are, around me.
Yep. It's a good app.
Yeah.
I have.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's been a lot of new technology for emergency action. I have this Wiser app. It'll for chemical spills, because that's another emergency. It'll tell me, it's like the emergency response guidebook information's in that app, so it'll tell me how far I have to evacuate people depending on the chemical. So that's a pretty cool app. If you got cell signal, you're gonna have that information right at your fingertips, because not everybody's gonna carry around that little ERG book with them.
Right.
What kind of chemical spill emergency action planning have you seen on sites? Have you been on a site where they're telling you where the wind socks are so you don't run downwind and stuff like that?
Well, I did a job, if you remember, out at the Terra Group in Sioux City. Back when I was with the American Safety Company, I did a job out there with the reactors.
Okay.
So they make ammonia out there at the Terra plant, and they've got wind socks everywhere. And dealing with chemicals, like Mosaic, when I was in Florida, did a lot of work with Mosaic, man. A lot of acid plants, phosphate acids, sulfuric acid.
Man.
It ain't nothing to play with.
No, that's the serious stuff there.
You got to know where the control rooms are, your breathing apparatus, how to wear it, how to be trained with it. So, if you're working in plants like that, pay very good attention to the orientations.
I believe it. Yeah. Reminds me of a real funny story. It was a biodiesel facility, and they had a lot of intense chemicals on site. And there was this construction crew coming on site to do something, so they put them through an orientation and they told them about these scary chemicals. And the safety person who did their orientation was really good at their job, but they scared this new construction worker to death. This safety person was going into detail. If you get this chemical on you, it'll eat your skin off into your bone and it'll melt your eyeballs. And, he was telling the truth, but, he really scared this new guy. And I got a call. Said, Aaron, we just had an employee exposed to a chemical on the site. We're rushing him to the emergency room right away. So I go start getting involved and doing accident investigation and all this. Turns out there was no spill. There was no exposure. There was an employee working over top of this other employee, and he was sweating real bad because it was summertime, and the sweat hit the expanded metal on the boom lift he was working on, and it dispersed it, so it was kind of spraying it on this employee, this new guy under him. And that new guy got so scared, he started running across the site, stripping his clothes off, buck naked, finding the shower, and showering on site buck naked. And, of course, everybody thought it was a real exposure, so they rushed him to the ER. But that I'll always remember that story.
Yeah, I was in my younger 20s. I worked at the carbide plant, which is now USEC here in West Paducah. And they've got a lot of radiation, UF, 4 gas. They made it's an old bomb plant. They
Okay.
made bombs.
Wow.
And we had a release one time we were in there. They released like 4 pounds of it. We were there like 4 days on lock cafeteria.
Man.
And they brought in food, and couldn't nobody leave. They got all of it, cleaned up, stopped, and everybody tested.
Wow.
So, when you're dealing with radiation and stuff like that, man, and chemicals, anything could happen.
Right. Yeah. So, emergency response, there's just so much to it. Emergency action planning, dealing with just even the unintentional release of a chemical, or like you were just saying, radiation, having plans in place that are continually updated and educating everybody on. What always bothered me, Tracy, was the different alarm sounds.
Right.
That always bothered me. I was doing a job in Russellville, Arkansas one time at a plant expansion. And they had a lot of different alarms, and I'm just a new safety guy arriving to the site, so I got to go through safety orientation just like everybody else. And this guy who's giving me the orientation, he's doing his best, but he did not really educate me very well on the different sounds. He was funny. He was actually making the sounds with his mouth. So he's like,
right.
All right, Aaron, if you hear that means it's a tornado and you got to shelter here. But if you hear a woo, 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 that means it's a fire and you got to go congregate here. And I'm thinking, like, how good is your mimicry of these sounds? What if you're really off? And in 15 days, am I going to remember the difference anyway? What if I hear a sound and I go shelter in place when I'm supposed to evacuate?
It's kind of funny to bring that up because a lot of times they'll give you a card about 6, 7 different types of sirens.
Okay.
And then on the flip side of it, it'll tell you where to go to depending on what area you're in.
Okay, that's cool.
Which makes it pretty complicated.
Oh, okay, so it's not cool.
At 10 o'clock, I might be in area 6. At 2 o'clock, I might be back in area 1.
Whoa.
So it's always a good idea to make sure when you go to a different area to know where your control room is and your concealed areas to go to with breathing air,
I understand having different noises for different emergencies. But for me personally, I would like there to be some words too. And I get it. There's so many people on a construction site that speak different languages. So that would be tough. But, I'm just thinking if I'm on a site and I've been there a minute and I forgot everything in orientation and I hear a sound, I'm honestly probably not going to remember if that's the shelter in place or the evacuate sound. So I think it would just be cool if the sound came on and then it was like evacuate, evacuate, or maybe while the sound's playing, it's saying evacuate or shelter in place in different languages. I always thought that would be a nice touch, but I haven't seen a site that. Well, I take that back. I was talking to somebody not too long ago, and their emergency system does talk while it alerts as well. So, all right, Mr. Matheny. Well, believe it or not, it has been 1 hour already, and I super appreciate you coming back on the show and dealing with emergency action planning on, for setting up a major construction project, and definitely have you back. There's so much more to pick your brain on. Always appreciate when you come on. Having some guy with over 30 years in construction safety management is such a valuable resource to be able to pick your brain and share it with all those other people, because I know for a fact there's new people going into these positions and they don't have a clue what to do, and none of the project managers and superintendents can really help them because it's not their area. So having you on here to share your info is super value. So appreciate your time, sir.
And thank you for having me. Have a Merry Christmas.
Yeah, man. And until next time. So for Mr. Tracy Matheny, I'm Aaron Iacino. Together today we are the Evil Safety Dudes. Until next time, everybody, stay safe.